start.
And once again, action. Welcome back. It's Tuesday and we're on episode 12, where I have titled this one The Unspoken Pause. So right up front, I need to say two things. One, this could be a trigger warning, or this is a trigger warning, as this could be very triggering to many people who've ever walked this road or have thought about walking this road, or have had people in their lives unsuccessfully walk this road. Number two, if you have these kinds of thoughts, if you have close friends or family that have spoken about this, please seek professional help. Straight out the gate, I am not a professional. I am here to just tell my story in the best way that I know how. Whew. Okay, so my first real exposure to anything to do with suicide, attempted suicide, was my ex. He had spoken about doing this a number of times throughout our life together. I have a close family friend who actually attempted it and was found in enough time to be revived. But that was all on the outskirts. So that's on the outskirts of my life, out on the perimeter. I mean, still close. I mean, clearly, you know, my ex-husband was very close to me. My, you know, best friend's husband, very close to me. And it affected us deeply. It affected us as a family deeply. So, but still, it's on the outskirts. It's on the perimeter. Close perimeter, but perimeter. I've talked about my divorce. So in April 2018, I got divorced. In October of 2018, I lost my career of 20 years, along with another handful of folks in a grand fashion. But I was okay with that. I needed out of that environment. It was mentally abusive. It was emotionally exhausting. And so I was okay. Financially, I made a way to be okay. But it was just me and my kids trying to navigate these new waters. And so I knew that I was going to take the next couple of months to not look for a job. We had had a rough year. 2018 was a rough year. And I felt like I needed to just be here. I needed to be here when my kids got up, when they did whatever they were doing, wherever they were going. Like, I needed to be here. I needed to invest deep quality time in my kids at the sacrifice of myself. I think I can look back and see when my daughter was in second grade, we had moved to a new town, and she was a target of a bully, and not just a, you know, you're fat and ugly. No, it was severe bullying. So much so that I was in the principal's office multiple times, meeting with the teacher. It culminated in her having enough boldness to do an anti-bullying video that actually, because she said what made her decide to go ahead and do this video was because she had seen another kid being bullied on the bus on the way home from school that day. News stations showed up. They wanted to do all these interviews with her. And she said that's what made her, you know, she had been bullied. And then finally, when she worked up enough courage and she saw this happening on the bus, she decided to make this video. It was a fun little video, still have it. And the bus driver heard about it. And the bus driver began to bully her. I mean, it is just, second and third grade was just so rough. It was so rough. And I can look back at that time and see that's when I feel like I lost my baby girl. I knew it at the time. It's not like I'm, you know, here she is 18 and I'm looking back going, oh, that's when all that started. There was a change. There was a shift in who she was. And and navigating the waters from that point on. I talked about in the Not Raising Jerks episode, like really just leaning in and meeting them where they are and knowing that there's stuff that they're doing and they're saying and they're whatevering when they're not around you. Like knowing that that's happening and being okay with it so that you can still watch and see what's going on here and being very perceptive. So I navigated these waters with her all those pubescent years, okay? Then, we go through the divorce, which was in its own way a breath for the kids, for her. And so it wasn't necessarily that, but all these years, my husband, close friends, everybody would always say to her, "Belle, you are so mature for your age." She was going on mission trips with me to Africa, setting foot on the ground and like pouring into kids in Africa and doing monumental things that no 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old kid should be doing. Like, it was just crazy. And so we always had this way of just saying, "Isabella, you are so mature for your age." So much so that I got caught up in it. And I would catch myself saying so many times, "Oh my God," like she would do something and I'd be like, "Belle, will you just act your age?" And I'd be like, she's only 12 or whatever. So, divorce happened, lost my job, and she's always been very financially conscious. She's always concerned about money, making sure that there's, not that she's ever had to really, terribly want for anything in her life, but she's wired that way, as opposed to my son, who if he gets a quarter in his pocket, he's got to spend it. Get a little bubblegum machine, okay? Like, it's gone. So we're working on that. But she's always been very financially conscious. So there was a whole lot of compounding things. We have, a childhood that she's navigating out of. We've got a divorce situation. She's trying, afterward, she said she was trying to be, the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, still be mature for her age, say all the right things, do all the right things, not be a burden on me financially, as I'm trying to navigate these new waters of my own. And it started ramping up. Things started ramping up. Till early January 2019, we were on our way home. We dropped her brother off with his grandparents. We were on our way home, and a little over 2/3 of the way home, she starts like feeling weird. She starts feeling weird, and I'm like, okay. She's wearing her smartwatch at the time, and I noticed her heart rate is a little higher than normal, and she's feeling weird, whatever. We get almost into town, and I call one of my best friends who's a nurse, and I'm talking to her about it, and she's like, it could be this, it could be that. She's like, whatever. And if you know my daughter, she does not want to go to the doctor if she can help it. Like, something's going to be cut off, or dislocating your shoulder when you're watching a Grey's Anatomy episode, but we'll let her have that. She just said. Anyway, I digress. But she's not going to the doctor. She's just not. And she sits up and looks at me, and she's like, "Get me to the emergency room now." And I'm like, okay. And I hung up with Crystal, and we took off. And her watch is like screaming at me because her heart rate is so extremely high. So we pull in the emergency room. I leave my car. My two best friends meet me there, and we navigate at the emergency room to, she's had a panic attack. And if you may have heard about panic attacks and you're like, "Oh my gosh, no, a panic attack is different than an anxiety attack. Like, a panic attack is physiological, like it's your body doing its own thing that you have zero control over. You cannot stop what your body's doing. It's just outwardly expressing itself. And you literally think you're having a heart attack. And if you've never had one before, you're gonna think your first one is a heart attack. It just is what it is. Her heart rate was still extremely high. They did an EKG, they did all the things, and she had a panic attack. And the more we talked and the more she began to let go, they diagnosed her with depression. Now, this is a kid that everybody's like, "Belle's depressed? Like, this just doesn't make sense." But as you start kind of connecting dots, it does make sense. A couple weeks later, it was January 17th. I'm home. Remember, divorce, job, I'm home. And Luke was not home. He had stayed with a friend. No, he had already gone to school. He'd already been picked up and gone to school. And I'm getting ready in my bathroom, and Belle comes in my bathroom petrified that she is about to kill herself. I, in good mom fashion, say, "Are you kidding?" And the fear in her eyes told me she was not. She had a means, and she was about to do it. That the voices in her head were about to win. And she came to enough to come and find me. So I called her therapist. I called our doctor, because the doctor had to get her admitted. I called her dad. I called my best friends. And we drove to the behavioral hospital. My best friend and I admitted her. We went into the room with her while they asked all the questions. And I watched my little baby girl that I just talked about the first time I saw her on an ultrasound screen, that I knew she was destined for something. I watched my baby girl through fear and failure to herself, in her mind, say things to these nurses that I never thought I'd hear her say. I watched as they strip searched her, cut strings out of her clothes, strings off of her out of her shoes. And take her away. I thought taking her to the hospital was the hardest thing I would ever have to do, but walking away from that hospital was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I had to go visit her 3 times while she was there. There was a lot of stories and a lot of events that transpired while she was there. We learned a lot of triggers and techniques and tips and signs that I needed to look for. I felt like a failure as a mom. I felt like I had let her down. I was scared to check her out. I mean, this was my good kid. Like, why are we here? She's such a good kid. Like, she does everything right. Why are we here? I don't want to check her out because we're going to go back to, like, I'm going to live in fear, in terrible fear that I'm going to wake up one morning and she will not have come and told me. But I checked her out. My best friend and I went and got her. And I had to come to the realization that sometimes there's no why. Sometimes there's no why. You know, we're teenagers. So I've talked about this a number of times, how we've not developed our frontal lobe when we're a teenager. Like, that's where that rationalization starts to come in to help us determine what's reality versus what's in our head. And so when we're teenagers, you know, when we break up with somebody, or, you know, we don't make a good grade, or we don't get XYZ, you know, the new XYZ, whatever it is, like we think our world is coming to an end. It's because we have no frontal lobe. And today we're navigating, we're trying, as teenagers, watching them navigate things they should not have to navigate as teenagers. Like, they just shouldn't have to. The world is at their fingertips behind a screen. They can be whoever they want to behind a screen, when what's really going on inside might be different than what is coming out their thumbs on a screen, or what they're telling people. And they're seeing all their friends get to buy yachts and fly to Europe all the time, and they're living in a house where we're just happy to have food sometimes. Like, the things that teenagers navigate today tells us sometimes there's no why. Being a teenager is 1,000 times harder today. It's the same for adults though. Like, I talked about in relationships on the friendship one, like, we were not made to be alone. We are relational creatures. We're meant to be relational. And yet so often we're not. And so whether you're a teenager, whether you're an adult, whether you're whatever, throw in this quarantine that we've all been living in the middle of, you know, the daylight saving, where it's dark at like noon, and it doesn't show daylight until 11, right before noon when it gets dark again. Like, it's 1,000 wonders that we don't see more of this. But here I am walking out with my baby girl, going, how do we form a new life? But I titled this The Unspoken Pause because 2 days later, she had been begging for a tattoo her entire life, which I can't blame her. You know, this is who I am. We went to a local tattoo shop, and she got a semicolon, which I think is beautiful. You know, the point of a semicolon is that there's more to come. There's more to my story. There's more to my story. There's more to her story. I'm not here to tell you that things got better the day we got out of the hospital. It is a daily, minute by minute sometimes, battle for our mental health. The mental health stigma has got to be broken, so we can talk about things like this, so we can model for the generation coming up behind us, and for the 2 generations ahead of me who never would talk about therapy or being on meds if necessary, or even opening up. You know, like, if I'm vulnerable to you, you have a way to destroy me. Like, we've got to find a way as a society to break the hold and the stigma on mental health, so we can stop watching those we love feel this is the only answer. I have a friend who just buried her teenage son with no signs, good kid. He just said he chose eternal life. What do you say to that? What do you say to that? We can't. There's nothing we can say to that. What I can say is, since then, since walking this road, and we're still walking it with my baby girl, I found myself watching and listening to signs and triggers more. So if you hear someone talk about it, lean in, get help, ask for help, something. Help people walk through their grief. I talked about it on my infertility episode. Like, we've got to lean in and help each other sit in our grief together. Just sit and lean, let someone lean on you. Just be there for people. Because here's the thing. My baby girl is still here. She's sitting right there. And I'm thankful. But let's open our eyes, open our ears, and just step in with people, sit in their grief with them. And for the love of everything, help start breaking the stigma on mental health and therapists and counseling and meds. We have to. This has to stop. that was fun. Next week, we will dive into imposter syndrome and finding our worth. But for now, that's all I've got. I hope you guys have a good week. Bye.